And welcome back to the NFLNU podcast. We are here on Tuesday, November the 5th, after a jam-packed Week 9. A lot of craziness in the NFL and a lot of fallout to get to today. We got breaking news happening as we're going on the air. So we got a lot to get to and a lot to talk about. So we're going to recap every game that happened over the weekend and Monday night in Week 9 of the NFL, and we're going to preview the Thursday night football matchup between the Chargers and Raiders, which suddenly got very, very interesting in the grand scheme of what goes on in the AFC. But first, we're going to get into the recap portion of the show. I want to first mention that in our picks section, we went 7-7. So probably the worst we've done if I'm doing my math correctly, but hey, still above 500. So the first game we're going to get to is the game that happened in London early Sunday morning. The Houston Texans and the Jags going at it in the last of the London series of games for the year. Texans win this one 26-3, and a lot to talk about, not just for this game, but the fallout that's happening as we speak right now. Carlos Hyde shined in this one, had 19 carries for 160 yards as the Texans just find a way to bully the Jaguars in front of a sold-out London crowd. Houston now 6-3 on the year, improves on a 2-win streak, and Jacksonville falls to 4-5, back to being streaky again. And Minshew Mania is now dead. Gardner Minshew, it was just announced about half an hour ago, it has been demoted. As soon as Nick Foles is fully healthy after their bye week coming up, Nick Foles will resume starting job for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So in this game, it was still close, for most of this game. But Gardner Minshew just absolutely imploded in the fourth quarter. Had four turnovers that just sunk any chance the Jaguars had. He had 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles. If I remember correctly, he's tied for the league lead with Daniel Jones for fumbles lost on the season. And it's just not... It leaves a sour taste in the mouth for poor Gardner Minshew, but it's the way it is. In fact, the last 4 drives of the game for the Jaguars, each one resulted in a turnover. Interception, interception, fumble, fumble. That was their last drive with Gardner Minshew, is going to be a turnover, and that's sad. Because there were moments when he truly shined in relief for Nick Foles. This game started out incredibly sloppy. The halftime score was 9-3 after a Darren Fells touchdown for Houston. Houston led 9-3 at the half, but then in the second half, Houston found a way to finally break through and start getting some points on the board. One pass and one rush touchdown, I'm trying to say, lifted the Texans past the Jaguars. But I think the real story of this game was the Houston defense. Holding Jacksonville to only 3 points. They really bottlenecked Leonard Fournette. 74 total rush yards for Jacksonville, and Leonard Fournette had 72 of those. The Jags offense was predicated heavily around the run game and trying to get things done through the run game. They came in as one of the better rushing offenses in the league, and Houston shut them down without J.J. Watt. So that was a big thing for the Houston defense, in my opinion. And most of Minshew's damage sounds like it came in the fourth quarter when the game was already well out of hand, and it was garbage time, so the defense wasn't really trying. Gardner Minshew finished his day 24 for 47, 309 yards, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, and 3 sacks. But Deshaun Watson, he had a good day. We had questioned how healthy he was going to be because of his eye injury. Went 22 of 28, 201 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Only 1 sack. And so really, really good job by that Texans offensive line. It felt like they were getting to him more than that by just watching the game. But, they only gave up 1 sack. So that's really, really big for that Houston's offensive line. And this was actually a really big day for the Texans. They were able to win this game, a nice division rivalry win. They're going into their bye week, and now they're at the top of their division since the Colts lost, which we'll get into here in a couple minutes. But this was a massive win for the Texans to regain supremacy in that AFC South. But for the Jags, both teams are going into their bye week, so we're going to see what they look like after. And the Jags are going back to Nick Foles, so we'll see, what their offense is going to look like. Because we only saw Nick Foles, if you remember correctly, for, a quarter in week 1 until he broke his collarbone. And the thing about broken collarbones is they become much easier to break after, they've been broken the first time. And Nick Foles has already broken his collarbone twice in his NFL career. So the key is going to be protecting Nick Foles going forward and make sure he doesn't get hit a whole bunch. But, I said last Friday that, I felt Gardner Minshew had played well enough to be the starter. After that fourth quarter performance, I can understand why they're going back to Nick Foles. I think Gardner Minshew was good in spurts, and we maybe have overvaluated what he was, but I think he can play. I really do. And he's a rookie. So you know what? The turnovers will happen, the mistakes will happen, he'll get better. But I think he can play. But once again, Texans win a sloppy one that the score really doesn't show how close it was, because if I remember correctly, it was still a low-scoring close game like halfway through the third quarter. So the score reads like the Texans just beat the holy hell out of the Jags, when in actuality it was more of a sloppy game where the Texans finally broke through. So once again, Texans win this one 26-3. Houston improves to 6-3 and are in front in their division for the first time in a couple weeks. And Jacksonville falls to 4-5, and both those teams are going into a bye week now. Moving on to our next one, Chicago at Philadelphia. Oh, you want to talk about sloppy football? Philadelphia wins this one 22-14. Philadelphia improves to 5-4. They're back above 500 and feeling good about themselves. And the Bears fall to 3-5 and have lost 4 straight. And it's about as ugly as you can get for the Bears right now. I started paying attention to this game about halfway through the second quarter because I was watching the Red Zone channel. And if you don't know what the Red Zone channel is, they bounce around all the games for you and tell you what's happening. And the host of the Red Zone channel, Andrew Siciliano, quite boldly stated that the Bears have 1 total yard of offense halfway through the second quarter. And I about choked on my drink. 1 total yard of offense. So then I abandoned the Red Zone channel because I had to get over to this game and watch what was happening. And Mitchell Trubisky was playing some god-awful football. The Bears had no anything. No rhythm, no nothing. It was just some atrocious football they were playing in the first half. In brutal honesty, that might have been the worst half of football I have seen a team play so far this season. That was how atrociously, horrendously bad that first half for the Bears was on offense. But to their credit, I think their defense held strong in that first half. They're going into halftime and it's only a 12-0 lead for a team that, their offense gave them nothing. At halftime, they had 9 yards of offense. That's less than nothing. That is atrocious. But, for Philadelphia, they were able to start, I don't want to say fast, but it was semi-fast. They got a touchdown right before halftime thanks to Zach Ertz, which you could argue was pass interference. I really think he got away with a push, but Eagles are up 12-0, and you know what? They're 4-0. They're undefeated in games that they have led at the half. So the key for Philadelphia is, and that includes this game, by the way. So the key for Philadelphia is just to try to get a lead, and everything will be okay. Because, in every other game, they've trailed almost by double digits at the half. So, going into this one, they're up 12-0 at the half, and they've seen what Trubisky's doing. He's doing less than nothing. I'm talking completions that are... There were multiple drives where the Bears finished with negative yardage. Like 4 plays minus 5 yards. 3 plays minus 6 yards. It was just awful football. So they're going into halftime, and You see the score and you see, well, the Bears only lost by 8 points, so they got back into it. I think that's a misnomer because if you watch that second half, it looked like the Eagles defense took their foot way off the gas. Because they saw what the Bears did offensively in the first half and they didn't feel threatened. They felt no threat by this offense who could only accumulate 9 total yards of offense. 9. So they felt it doesn't matter what we do, they're not going to move the ball. I mean, seriously, how would you feel if the team you're playing has 9 total yards? I know you feel like you should finish the game, and that is absolutely true. But I understand where the Eagles defense is coming from. They're sitting here watching this team play. They don't see any reason to, have to try that hard because this team is doing it to themselves. Uh, so they got back into it because Mitchell Trubisky started making some deep passes to some wide open wide receivers. And when I say wide open, I mean that there were guys that didn't have defenders within 15 yards of them. I'm talking wide, wide, wide open. And that's the only reason that the Bears were able to get deep in the Philadelphia territory and get by the goal line when they would punch it in for touchdowns. And David Montgomery, he finished his day 14 of 40 for 2 touchdowns and 3 catches for 38 yards. The Bears running back, he was their best. That was their best offensive producer. And you go back and look at the Bears' drives in the second half, you'll notice that there are 2 drives where Trubisky will make a deep pass downfield that's like 50 yards to a wide open receiver, and then it's a bunch of little 2-yard gains, and they somehow get into the end zone with David Montgomery. That was their offense in the second half, just hitting guys that the Eagles weren't covering. They weren't even trying to cover. I cannot stress this enough that I truly believe the Eagles just weren't threatened by this team. So now it's getting late into the fourth quarter, and the Bears are only down by 14. The Eagles are going to have to start trying again. So the Eagles offense does this great drive. You know what they do? They have an 8-minute and 14-second drive in the fourth quarter. They just eat up the entirety of the clock, and it sets up a 38-yard field goal by Jake Elliott to help extend the lead. So they went out and had this insanely long drive. Carson Wentz is making some clutch third down throws, and the Bears defense just cannot get off the field. I mean, I know that defense is tired. They've been on the field for the majority of the game, but at some point, you got to make a stop. And they just couldn't do it. To his credit, Carson Wentz, the Eagles quarterback, went 26 of 39 for 239 yards, a touchdown and 4 sacks. You could also say this was the Jordan Howard revenge game, the former Bears running back, now with the Eagles, 19 rushes, 82 yards, and a touchdown. The Eagles were far and away the better team in this game. Just by watching it and looking at numbers, they were the way better team. And I'm going to read you Mitchell Trubisky's stats. You ready for this? Most of this was done in the second half. 10 of 21. That's what he threw for. He completed 10 passes out of 21. 125 yards and 3 sacks. That is not going to win you any games. And Matt Nagy, the Bears head coach, said that after the game he had no thought of benching Trubisky. There needs to at least be a thought, because this guy is outright dooming your season. He cannot play as a starter right now. Let's say it boldly and clearly. Mitchell Trubisky, as he is right now, is not a starting quarterback. I'm not saying he can never be that. Who knows? Maybe someday he can grow into that. But as of right now, he is not good enough to be a starting quarterback. And he is outright dooming your team and helping you to lose games. And you know what? Matt Nagy isn't being much help. He really isn't. He's somehow making the situation worse in Chicago. The Bears season is literally on life support. I have no faith in this team right now. Their offense is just a gigantic dysfunctional mess that feels like it's getting worse and worse as the weeks go on. And there's no positives from this Bears offense except for the sudden emergence of David Montgomery. But even with Montgomery's, finally being used correctly, they're still awful. So I think the Bears are just one of those teams that's just going to spiral into obscurity right now. And the sooner they come to the realization that Mitch Trubisky cannot be their quarterback, the better. That's just putting it bluntly. And I know that's cold, and I know he's only, halfway through his third season, so he still has a lot of room to grow. But he's not getting the job done. And this was a team that had serious aspirations of winning their division this year, making a deep playoff run, and it's all gone up in smoke because their offense is awful. The Bears really have one of the worst offenses in the NFL. They're up there with, in my opinion, the Bengals and Jets and being a wholly inept offense. But to their credit, I want to really praise the Eagles in this game. They played a good game. Their defense played well. And the Eagles are right back in the thick of it. They're above 500 and only a half game back of Dallas in their division right now. Eagles are back in the thick of it. And they're showing some consistency. So go for Philadelphia. Once again, Eagles win this one, 22-14. And we're moving on. Colts at Steelers. Steelers win a surprising one, 26-24. Pittsburgh improves to 4-4. Colts fall to 5-3. Adam Vinatieri, the Colts kicker, missed a 43-yard go-ahead field goal with 1:14 left to give the Steelers the win in this one. Really, really crazy game when you go back and look at it when you get a chance. Neither offense played good in this game, and here's why. Because in the second quarter, Jacoby Brissett, the Colts starting quarterback, had one of his offensive linemen hit him in the leg, and he got hurt, left the game. In comes long-term backup Brian Hoyer, and that was about halfway through the second quarter when it happened, and Brissett had only thrown 5 passes in the game so far. So in comes Brian Hoyer in relief, and head coach Frank Reich says that it's an MCL issue for Jacoby Brissett. And there's talk he could potentially play this Sunday, so against the Dolphins, so who knows. But anyway, Brian Hoyer comes in, and he did okay. Brian Hoyer did all right. He had the one awful interception, but he threw 3 touchdowns. He went 17 of 26 for 168 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's good in relief. He had almost the same exact yardage as Mason Rudolph, the Steelers quarterback, who went 26 of 35 for 191, a touchdown and an interception. So, Brian Hoyer, I think he did enough in relief. It's just Adam Vinatieri it wasn't a good hold or a kick. The laces were facing towards Vinatieri, so it wasn't a good spot for the ball, and Vinatieri shanked it. Colts lose. Colts lose another heartbreaker because of a kicker. The Steelers' defense, I had really praised them on Friday. They had their moments in this game. I just mentioned that Brian Hoyer threw an interception. Well, that interception ended up being a 96-yard interception return for a touchdown by Minkah Fitzpatrick in this game. But once again, they allowed Brian Hoyer to throw 3 touchdowns on them. So that was a bit of a surprise in my opinion. The Steelers' bread and butter is their defense is going to find ways to win them games, and they're probably going to need a defensive touchdown each week to win a game. And when James Conner gets healthy, they rely on him more. It's just that Mason Rudolph, I'm not sold on him per se. He does a lot of dump offs as a quarterback, and some games that's going to bite the Steelers in the behind, but in this game it didn't. Because their defense made enough plays to keep them above the water. I'm not sold on the Steelers per se. They're this frisky defensive team, and their defense is really good. That can, cause havoc against any team. They're 4-4. They're 500. I mean, who saw that one coming once Big Ben got hurt? I just don't know about the Steelers. I want to count them out, but that defense is so good. But then again, no one really knows anything about the AFC. It's so it's such a weird structure that's going on. The Patriots and Ravens are at the top, but then who's after that? The Texans? Question mark. Then who? Chiefs when Mahomes is healthy. Then what? The Raiders? It's a weird structure in the NFC. There's not a lot of clear who's good and who's not. It's just a lot of. It's just a gigantic blob. It's so weird. But I think the Steelers will be fine as long as this defense keeps performing. Who knows? Maybe they'll get close to 500 with this weird, frisky defense. Who knows? But I think Brian Hoyer did okay in this game, and I know Frank Reich is a good enough head coach and play caller to come up with a scheme that can help him win if Jacoby Brissett has to miss time. They're playing the Dolphins this weekend. It's not a big game, so maybe Jacoby misses a game or two for the Colts. They will miss him. Jacoby has played good for them, but I think Brian Hoyer can do just enough. But it's going to be even harder because we talked about it on Friday because when the news happened while we were recording that T.Y. Hilton was going to miss this game. It sounds like T.Y. Hilton's going to miss a couple games for the Colts. So that's another big blow to them. It just feels like injuries just keep happening to this team. But we'll see if they can find a way to turn it around next week. But once again, Steelers win a big one, 26-24, and improved to 4-4 on the season. And we're moving on. Going to Miami. The Jets and Dolphins. Dolphins get their first win of the season. Miami wins 26-18 in a... Oh, wow. Can you even say this is an upset? I want to say it's an upset, but I don't know if it is because the Jets are that bad. Miami, both teams are now 1-7 on the year. Miami snaps a 7-game losing streak. And Brian Flores, the Dolphins head coach, gets a Gatorade bath at the end of the game to celebrate. As the Jets somehow find a way to make things work. Worse. Not work. It's definitely not working. Worse for the Jets. This was the highest point total for Miami on the season, 26 points in this game. And it started out, okay for the Jets. They scored their first touchdown of the game after a 12-yard pass from Darnold to Jamison Crowder. And then Miami decided, okay, we're going to try really hard in the second quarter. Because in the second quarter, Miami scores 21 unanswered points to go up 21-7. And I was sitting there watching that. I'm like, oh my gosh, the Dolphins are going to win a game. Because we talked about it on Friday that I felt the Dolphins were frisky enough to steal one and that it could be against the Jets. And it was. So now the Dolphins are riding a 21-7 lead late in the second quarter. The Jets are amazingly able to cut into it, not because that they did cut into it, but because how they cut into it. A field goal and a safety happen in favor of the Jets, and they score 5 points. So now it's a 21-12 lead at the half. By the way, all 3 touchdowns by the Dolphins in the second quarter, all thrown by Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was having a heck of a game. And there was, the offensive explosion, 21-12 at the half, and you're thinking, okay, what are we going to see from these two not so good teams in the second half? You saw 11 total points in the second half. 11. The Jets scored 6, so they kicked 2 field goals. Miami scored 5, so they also got a safety and a field goal in this game to outlast the Jets. And oh my gosh, it's just things are getting worse for the Jets. That game that they played against the Cowboys, which was only 3 weeks ago, now feels like a lifetime ago for the Jets. This is one of their worst seasons that we've had in quite some time. And that's saying a lot, because we've endured a lot of 4-win, 3-win seasons for the Jets the last decade or so. But this is up there with one of the worst. This was just an awful, awful game. The defense made Ryan Fitzpatrick look amazing. The Dolphins quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 24 of 36 for 288 yards and 3 touchdowns, like I just said. He looked amazing out there. And I know that the Jets have had defensive issues. They've had to bring in a lot of guys off the street to start. But that's still no excuse. The Dolphins were averaging like 11 points per game, and you made them look like gods on the field. And it's not just the Jets' defense. Their offense is what's really killing them right now. Sam Darnold looks like he's regressing. His footwork is bad. It's all just a very bad situation in New York. Sam Darnold went 27 to 39, 260 yards, a touchdown, an interception, and 3 sacks. A very much meh day for the Jets. It still feels like they don't know what they're doing with Le'Veon Bell either. I don't even remember Le'Veon Bell's yardage total in this game. That's how small it was. I don't know what the Jets are trying to do. And it feels like it's just getting worse and worse, and it feels like they're almost stunting Sam Darnold's growth with whatever they're trying. It's just not good. And like I said, I feel like Sam Darnold's regressing, and that's a bad sign if you're a Jets fan. Because at worst, you would think that you would see growth this year. That, hey, maybe we'll be frisky, win 8 games, and we'll see Sam Darnold continue to grow with Adam Gase, this offensive guy who has helped every quarterback he's helped. I mean, every quarterback he's coached. It's getting worse. It's getting way worse. And you know what? I said that if the Jets find a way to lose this game, that Adam Gase could be a one-and-done head coach. Yeah. I could absolutely see it. And I am officially putting this podcast on Adam Gase watch. You can't lose to the Dolphins. You just lost to a team doing a blatant tank job, whose front office's job is to make this team bad so they can get the number 1 overall draft pick. The front office has been trying to make this team the worst in the league. And you lost to that team. They asked head coach Adam Gase after the game, "Are you embarrassed by this loss?" And he said, "You can't be embarrassed by stuff like this in the NFL." Yeah, you can. You just lost to one of the worst teams in the entire league, who is probably going to only win 1 game this year. Maybe they'll win 2 because they play the Jets again later. I watched that press conference with Adam Gase after the game, and I genuinely asked, I put it on Twitter, at least act like you care. Because it didn't feel like Adam Gase cared. At least give a damn. Act upset. Do something. And we did none of that. I am of the firm opinion that the Jets are one of the worst teams in the league. I am putting them right next to the Bengals as the worst team in the league. Yes, the 0-7 Bengals, who are starting a rookie quarterback, Ryan Finley, next week. I think the Jets are that bad. They are the worst team in the league, in my opinion. And, credit to the Dolphins. I know that felt great for those players and coaches who have hated every moment of this season because they want to win more than anybody. So, huge credit to them. They finally get a win. And you know what? Savor it, Miami, because you know what? You can, maybe you can have your cake and eat it too, if you get what I'm saying. You got to win, and that feels great, don't it? And maybe you'll still be in the running for the number 1 overall draft pick in April, because you still got to play the Bengals and you still got to play the Jets. So you know what? You can toss those games and still be in the running. So we'll see what Miami does. But huge credit to the Dolphins. They get their first one, 26-18, and we are on Adam Gase watch to see if he gets canned, because you can't lose to the tank job Dolphins and not expect that job security is A-okay. Moving on. Washington at Buffalo. Buffalo wins this one 24-9. Bills improved to 6-2 on the season. Their best start since 1993 when they won 7 games to start the season. And Washington falls to 1-8. It's their worst start since 1998. Oh boy. You look at the score and you think, hey, the Bills did what you asked them to do, Hayden. They went out. They won by double digits. It looks like they bullied the Washington football team. Actually, it wasn't that. The Bills turned in a very uneven performance against a very bad team. The Bills jumped out to an early 17-3 lead in Buffalo, and I'm thinking, all right, this is the Bills team I've been waiting for. It's in the second quarter, too, so it's still early, so they could have blown them out early. I'm like, this is the Bills team I've been waiting to see. They're bullying a bad team. This is how you do it, Buffalo. But in the second quarter, Washington cuts it to a 8-point game, and it remains that 8-point lead for Buffalo until 2 minutes and 21 seconds left in the fourth quarter. I'm sitting there watching this. I'm like, Washington can't even move the football, and you're struggling to beat this team? Really, Buffalo? Devin Singletary, the Bills running back who feels like he's taken over that backfield lately, scored the touchdown with 2 minutes and 21 seconds left in the fourth quarter to, make it 24-9. But I feel like it shouldn't have to come down to a late fourth quarter touchdown to finally put this awful Washington team away for the Bills. Dwayne Haskins, this is probably the best we've seen him so far this season. He went 15-22 for 144 yards. I think that's his highest yardage total so far. But the Washington offense flowed through Adrian Peterson, who the Bills could not stop. The Bills had no answer for Adrian Peterson, who went 18 rushes, 108 yards. I mean, he looked like the old AP out there. He looked like Adrian Peterson from like 4 years ago out there. And this Bills defense has had a serious problem with stopping the run the last few weeks. I'm starting to think that's how you're going to beat that defense, is just run right at them. They got no answer, because I remember they made the Bengals run offense look good when they played them in Buffalo. So I think that's how you stop this Bills defense, just run right at them. Haskins did okay, like I said, but Josh Allen didn't do much better. He went 14 of 20, 160 yards. One passing touchdown, got sacked twice, but he also rushed for 12 yards on 8 attempts and a rushing touchdown. But like I said, Devin Singletary, the Bills running back, really feels like he's taken over. 20 rushes for 95 yards and a touchdown. Then he caught 3 passes for 45 yards. Like I said, it was still an 8-point game late in the fourth quarter. This Bills team has struggled to put away these bad teams. Remember, they had to come back against Miami. They had to come back against the Bengals. 2 teams who have combined for 1 win. I mean, Washington is a very bad team. You know how they're a very bad team? They haven't scored a touchdown in 3 weeks. You have to go back to when they played the Dolphins 4 weeks ago to see when they scored a touchdown. That's bad for Washington. That's real bad. But for Buffalo, I mean, you can't put away a team that's only kicking field goals in your home? I said to come out and bully a team, and, the score says they bullied them, but they didn't. This was an uneven performance, and I'm really starting to get worried about the Bills. The Bills have the feel of that team that's going to win like 9 to 10 games, make the wild card round, and then get blown out by a team 35-10 in the first playoff game of the year. That's what they feel like. I mean, puff your chest, Buffalo. Do something. Show us why you're 6-2 and why people should take you seriously. And you know what you shouldn't be doing? You shouldn't be struggling against a 1-win team like Washington, against a 1-win team like Miami, against a no-win team like the Bengals. All 3 of those games were in Buffalo, and you struggled to beat them. That is a bad, bad sign. I wanted to make the case that, maybe Buffalo plays down to their opponents. Like, they'll struggle to beat the bad teams, but when a good team shows up, they'll show up. Like they did against New England. They really hung their hats on that close loss to the Patriots. But then you got to remember, they got blown out by the Eagles. A very one-sided effort. The Eagles are above 500 team, and you got mollywopped by them. So I don't know what this Bills team is right now. I really don't. And until they bully somebody and really assert their dominance, I'm going to have a bad feeling about this Buffalo team that I have praised since like week 1 on this podcast. And we're in week 10, and I'm really starting to doubt the Bills. But once again, they win this one 24-9. They're 6-2, and feel like they're in the driver's seat for one of the wild card spots in the AFC, especially since their schedule is so light. But keep an eye on them because I don't have a good feeling about them. Moving on to our next one, Tennessee Titans at Carolina Panthers. Carolina wins this one 30-20, and we got a ton to talk about in this game. Carolina improves to 5-3 on the season, and Tennessee falls to 4-5. It snaps a 2-game winning streak for them. Christian McCaffrey, the all-world running back for the Panthers, has 3 touchdowns as the Panthers bounce back in this one. He left halfway through the fourth quarter to get looked at for a potential head injury, but he turned out to be okay, so that's good news for the Panthers. The score looks like, hey, this was a close game. It's only a 10-point final score. It really wasn't that close. The Panthers jump out to an early 17-0 lead in the second quarter and ride that to halftime. And the Titans defense just had no answers in this game. It's the most points they'd given up all season long. They were one of the few teams that had, only given up at most 25 points this season. And they got mollywopped by the Panthers, who just rode Christian McCaffrey like there was no tomorrow. Christian McCaffrey had 24 rushes for 146 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Then he caught 3 passes for 20 yards and a touchdown. So the Panthers are up big in the second half, and it just felt like they took their foot off the gas and allowed the Titans to crawl back in garbage time. Ryan Tannehill, the Titans quarterback, went 27-39 for 331 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions though, and 4 sacks. It just late in the fourth quarter, after it felt like the Panthers had put it away, the Titans just started getting crawling back in with garbage time points. They made it a 10-point game, but at that point it was too late and time ran out. In my opinion, the Titans aren't meant to score a lot of points. Like I said, this was the most that their defense had given up all season long by a very wide margin. So when their defense doesn't perform well, it's not good because they're not meant to score, bunches of points. I think they're a lot like the Bills. They're meant to top out right at around 20 points or right around there. But like I just mentioned, Christian McCaffrey left in the fourth quarter. It was right after he had scored a 58-yard touchdown run. He had hit his head on the turf, and that's the point where it felt like it was over. But Tennessee crawled their way back into it. But for Tennessee, I think their quest for the 4th straight season of ending 9-7 continues. They won 2 games, and now they're back in the loss column. It just has the feel of another 9-7 season for Tennessee. But for the Panthers, I felt like you got to be encouraged by what you saw. This team really got embarrassed by the 49ers last week in a one-sided effort. Then they come back home to Carolina, and they beat a good defense. They, like it or not, the Titans have a good defense. And the Panthers went out there and asserted their will and dominated with Christian McCaffrey. And Kyle Allen, to his credit, played well in this one too. 17-32 for 232 yards. 2 touchdowns, an interception, and 3 sacks. Considering what the Panthers put on the field last week, this was a vast improvement for them. DJ Moore, the Panthers wide receiver, 7 catches, 101 yards. This was very good for the Panthers. They really needed this after scoring, 13 points last week against the 49ers, allowed 8 sacks and 5 turnovers. They really, really, really needed this game. Speaking of a bounce back for the Panthers offense, their defense had a bounce back game in this one too. Remember, they got embarrassed. They allowed 50 points on their defense last week. They had 4 sacks in this game and got 3 turnovers. That was a really nice bounce back for and also good Carolina Panthers defense that leads the league in sacks right now with 34, if I remember correctly. So the Panthers are feeling good about themselves and win a good game against a tough defense, and they're right back in the win column and feeling good about themselves. And we had talked about it Friday. This is where the news comes into it. Talked about it Friday that, there was talk that Cam Newton's foot wasn't healing correctly by Pro Football Talk. Then it was backed up on Sunday by a report by Jake Glazer from the Fox NFL pregame show that the Panthers were considering, maybe we put him on injured reserve. That was an option, they were saying. And, well, now it's Tuesday, and right before we started recording, the news broke that the Panthers are putting Cam Newton on injured reserve. His season is now officially over. Only played in 2 games this season and never looked like himself. And they're still struggling to figure out what's wrong with his foot. So Kyle Allen is going to be the Panthers starting quarterback for the rest of this season. Even if they make the playoffs. It's Kyle Allen's show now. And you know what? If he can impress and maybe win a playoff game, maybe Cam Newton is the Carolina Panthers quarterback next season. Think about it. You got a very injury-prone, older quarterback. I know Cam Newton's been the face of the franchise in Carolina for years. He won an MVP. He took you to a Super Bowl. I'm a massive Cam Newton fan. But he is owed 19... Well, he's not owed. He's owed a lot more than that. But the Panthers can save $19.1 million in cap space if they move on from Cam Newton this offseason and ride a younger quarterback in Kyle Allen. I'm just saying. If Kyle Allen impresses down the stretch and the Panthers in the season with a winning record, which I really think they could, and make a wild card, and maybe even win a wild card. I mean, we've seen crazier things happen in the NFL, for God's sakes. Nick Foles outdueled Tom Brady in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Anything is possible. We could seriously see Kyle Allen be the Panthers starting quarterback going forward. Not just for this season, for years to come. And Cam Newton could be on a different team. That talk's going to subside for now because we're in the middle of the season. But once the season is over and we're getting into March and April, it's going to pick back up and it's going to be a major storyline to follow. It's worth keeping an eye on. But for the Panthers right now, they just need to focus on this season with Kyle Allen. And you know what? They don't have to make a choice anymore for right now. There's that talk of what are you going to do? You're going to ride Cam or are you going to ride Allen? Well, they're riding Allen. The choice was made for them. So the choice gets put off for a couple months and they can just focus on winning. And I think the Panthers are a good team. I really do. They're 5-3 right now, and who knows where they're going to finish. But they got a big win this Sunday. Once again, Carolina wins 30-20, and we're moving on. Last of our early games, Minnesota at Kansas City, a wild one in Kansas City. Kansas City won this one 26-3. Both teams are now 6-3 on the season. Harrison Butker, the Chiefs kicker, hits a 44-yard go-ahead field goal as time expires to lift the Chiefs past the Vikings in a truly crazy game in Arrowhead Stadium. It was a back-and-forth seesaw affair that really never saw one team really assert their will on the other until Harrison Butker hit the final go-ahead shot. But I will say, Matt Moore turned in another solid performance for the Kansas City Chiefs. He went 25 of 35 for 275 yards, a touchdown. He got sacked 5 times, but you know what? He's given them a chance to win these last 2 weeks, and that's all you could ever ask for from a backup. And not just Matt Moore. The running game in Kansas City, the long, dormant running game that we said they needed to get going, is back. Damian Williams, 12 rush attempts for 125 yards and a touchdown. Now, granted, most of that came off of, a 91-yard rush touchdown in the third quarter? But still, I mean, he had 125 yards and the Chiefs had 147 total rushing yards. That's how you help a quarterback out. You get him a run game going. And not just the Chiefs' offense played well, their defense played well, too. They allowed 96 total rush yards. I think 75 of those went to Dalvin Cook. And they held Stephon Diggs to 4 yards. You know, we had talked about it so much that this Vikings offense has so many ways to beat you with Dalvin Cook, Stephon Diggs. Chiefs shut them both down. You know, Adam Thielen left early in this game because he re-aggravated his hamstring injury. The Vikings' leading receiver in this game was Laquan Treadwell. the former first-round pick who was cut by this team before the season started, but they re-signed him. It was just the Vikings offense did not play well in this game. I cannot state that enough. Dalvin Cook did not play well. Kirk Cousins, he threw 3 touchdowns, but other than that, it felt like the Vikings just came up short in the end of the game, and I don't know. I want to say they got conservative, but the stats really don't show up that. I feel like the Vikings came up short. I really do. It just felt like maybe the moment was a bit too big for them. Not just their offense didn't play well, their defense didn't play well. I mean, they allowed Matt Moore to go up and down the field on him. Tyreek Hill had a big game, 6 catches, 140 yards, and a touchdown. And like I said, Damian Williams had a 91-yard touchdown run in the second half. You don't see that from this Vikings defense. You don't. They were big holes, and they were getting beat a lot. This was not the Vikings defense that we have seen so far this season. I was really, really, really surprised just watching this game happen. I was stunned watching it. I was truly stunned. And I don't know if it was a big game, so maybe the Vikings came up short because it was a bigger game against a real opponent and more people were watching. I'm not sure if with the Vikings because they had that white-hot October where they looked fantastic. And now we're in November and things have gotten off to a very rough start. Now, granted, Kansas City has talent and they're a good team, but their defense is awful. The Chiefs' defense is not good, and their defense dominated the Vikings. That cannot be stated enough. They shut down Stephon Diggs and they shut down Dalvin Cook. And Kirk Cousins came up small. So, I'm just saying, it wasn't a good sign for the Vikings. This is not a world-ending loss. It's not. But this wasn't a good sign, especially since the Vikings have to play the Cowboys on Sunday night in Arlington. It just wasn't a good sign. But to their credit, the Chiefs did great. Andy Reid drew up a great game plan. So did Eric Bieniemy, their offensive coordinator, that helped maximize Matt Moore's strengths. And you know what? Matt Moore's done a pretty good job in relief of Patrick Mahomes. So he shouldn't have to rush back. Don't feel rushed because I think Matt Moore is doing a great job at holding the fort down for the Chiefs. And it sounds like maybe Mahomes will be ready by next week. We don't know yet. They said the same thing last week. So we'll see what happens with Mahomes, but he shouldn't feel the need to rush back. Matt Moore is holding the fort down pretty well, and the Chiefs are 1-1 without him. So we'll see what happens. But once again, Chiefs win a wild one, 26-23, and we're moving on. Tampa Bay at Seattle. I don't think anybody saw this one coming. Seattle wins a wild one, 40-34 in overtime. I think this was arguably game of the weekend. Russell Wilson hits receiver Jacob Hollister for a 10-yard touchdown to win it in overtime. Wilson was absolutely clutch in overtime, went 5 for 8 and passing for 70 yards. The Seahawks got the ball first in overtime and just didn't look back. They didn't want to give the Buccaneers a chance. This was actually a really fun quarterback duel in this one. Surprisingly. Wilson was flawless. He threw 5 touchdown passes and looked like the MVP that I've been hyping up for weeks. He looked every bit of it. And you know what? To his credit, Jameis Winston played pretty dang good in this game. Outside of the one costly turnover in the fourth quarter that we'll get to in a second. But outside of that, Jameis Winston played great. But it was a really stunning beginning to this one. Tampa Bay took a 21-7 lead in the second quarter in this one, and I was stunned by that. I'm like, I know I've given the Seahawks defense a bit of a jabbing and a hard time on this show, but I didn't think they were that bad. After Tampa Bay takes that 21-7 lead, for the rest of the game, including overtime, after they take that 21-7 lead, Tampa Bay gets outscored 33-13 for the rest of the game. The Seahawks just took over. But like I mentioned, Winston was almost perfect. He did have a very costly fumble late in the fourth quarter that set up a Seattle field goal. It looked like he just lost the ball when he was bringing it back to throw it. It was a very costly fumble. And, I was sitting there looking at the stats for this game. As I was watching it, I'm like, holy cow, Winston's playing great. And I looked at it, I'm like, wow, no turnovers. Really great for Winston. Literally, as I said it, he fumbled the ball. I cannot make this up. I literally said, wow, Winston's doing great. Hadn't turned the ball over. Fumbles the ball 5 seconds later. I'm like, oh my gosh, I jinxed him. But other than that, he played great. And you know what? He led a really great drive late in the game to tie it at 34 after Ugumbwale, the running back, I think he's a fullback, ran it in for a touchdown from the 1 yard line. 46 seconds left, and Jameis Winston just tied the game in Seattle. That's a very big clutch moment for the young man who's searching for reasons to be the starting quarterback right now. And you're thinking 46 seconds left? Oh, Seattle's probably just going to run out the clock and play for overtime. Nope, Wilson goes on this insane surgical drive with seconds left. He gets the Seahawks in field goal range and sets up his kicker, Jason Myers, for a 40-yard kick to win the game. And I'm telling you, it was a great drive by Russell Wilson to get into field goal range. And Jason Myers just whiffed the kick. He shanked it. And we get overtime. And I was like, wow, that's a heartbreaking moment for Jason Myers. It was a makeable kick. He just whiffed it pretty bad. So Seattle wins the toss, and they correctly choose to receive because, as I've talked about before, if you basically get the ball to start overtime, you're almost guaranteed to win the game, and that's why NFL overtime is stupid. Seattle got the ball, and Russell Wilson didn't even want to give him a chance. He said, I want the ball, and I'm going to win the game. And he did. I'm going to throw you some stats and figures. You ready for this one? Russell Wilson, 29 of 43 for 378 yards, 5 touchdowns, like I said. 5 touchdowns. Chris Carson, the Seahawks running back, 16 carries, 105 yards. DK Metcalf, 6 catches, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Also, Tyler Lockett, 13 catches, 152 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That Seahawks offense is dangerous. And they're only going to get better because guess what? They signed Josh Gordon last week. So now Josh Gordon can come in and literally be the number 3 wide receiver on this roster. That should scare teams. But let me show you Jameis Winston's numbers. 29 of 44, 335 yards, 2 touchdowns. And like I mentioned, the 1 fumble. But outside of that, he played really, really, really good. And, that was probably the best Winston we've seen since, the Rams game in, week 5? Mike Evans, the Tampa Bay wide receiver, 12 catches, 180 yards, and a touchdown. This was just a fun shootout in Seattle that, ended in overtime because one team got the ball first and scored. Tampa Bay is so up and down, especially their quarterback. You just never know what you're going to get. Their secondary isn't that good, which is why Russell Wilson threw all over it. And that usually stout run game got ran over by Chris Carson. Tampa Bay's a 2-win team right now, so you just never know what you're going to get with them. But, Wilson looked like a true MVP that I've been hyping up all season long. That offense is absolutely dangerous, especially with him at the helm, and they're going to only get better now that Josh Gordon's there. But that defense in Seattle, I think, is a liability. It's really starting to show cracks and not be as good as we thought it would. I mean, you made Jameis Winston look great and allowed him to score 34 points on you. And you gave up a game-tying touchdown with, 40 seconds left. I mean, come on. Seattle used to be a scary place to go into and play. But now we've seen the Bengals go in there and look good. We've seen now the Buccaneers go in there and look good. I mean, the Seattle defense really has to step it up now. It really does, especially since they have to play, the 49ers twice in the coming weeks. So they really need to step up, but their offense bailed them out, and Wilson looked great. Once again, Seattle wins a absolute shootout in Seattle, 40-34 in overtime, and we're moving on to another fun game. Lions at Raiders. Oakland wins this one 31-24. Oakland improves to 4-4. Lions fall to 3-4-1. David Carr, Raiders quarterback, hits rookie wide receiver Hunter Renfrow for a 9-yard touchdown with 2 minutes and 4 seconds left to take the lead. Lions get the ball back, and they get down to the goal line. Matthew Stafford leads this great drive, and he gets them down to the goal line with like 10 seconds left. But there's a problem. Lions don't have any timeouts, and it's 4th down right at the goal line. They can't stop the clock, and they can't spike the ball. So their panic is ensuing by the Lions. Everybody's pointing and shouting at each other, and they're not set, and the clock's running out. Now it's 8 seconds left. Lions offense is confused. The Raiders defense is confused. And clock's ticking. They're running out of time. It looks like they're not going to get a playoff. And what does John Gruden, the Raiders head coach, do? He takes a timeout, which is the worst possible thing you could do. I stood up and yelled at my TV. I screamed, "What are you doing, man?" I really think if John Gruden doesn't call that timeout, the Lions don't get a playoff. At worst, it's a dysfunctional play at best that maybe one wide receiver runs the correct route. That's at best what it would have been for the Lions. They were absolutely confused and did not know what they were doing. So John Gruden calls a timeout, brings his defense over. He tells them this is what we're going to run. Lions go to their side. They huddle up around Darren Bevel, the offense coordinator, and he tells them this is what we're going to run. They come back out to the 1-yard line. But stunningly for the Lions, they don't have Kenny Golladay or Marvin Jones Jr. in the game, the two wide receivers who both had over 100 yards and a touchdown in this game. Neither of them are on the field. So they come out in this big jumbo formation and they run a play action pass to the backup tight end Logan Thomas. Are you kidding me? It falls incomplete. Raiders win the game because the Lions wanted to get cute and weird with it on the 1-yard line. For whatever reason, the Raiders, held on to a win in a really fun game. I really can't explain that last call by Darren Bevel to go with that play action pass to Logan Thomas, but outside of that, the Lions offense played good in this game. Matt Stafford, the Lions quarterback, 26 of 41, 406 yards, 3 touchdowns, had an interception early and 2 sacks. Kenny Golladay, like I mentioned, 4 catches, 132 yards, and a touchdown. Marvin Jones Jr., like I just said, 8 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown. Lions offense was doing work, and they took those 2 guys who had over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown, both off the field with the game on the line. It just doesn't make sense. But the Raiders were no slug on offense either. Derek Carr had a really good game. 20 of 31 for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns, got sacked once. The poise he showed on that game-winning drive where the Raiders went ahead was something else. Josh Jacobs continues to build on Rookie of the Year case for the Raiders. Their running back, 28 carries, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs is looking really good for the Raiders. In this match, we talked about it. It's a matchup of really bad defenses. Went in favor of Oakland. It was a back and forth affair throughout this game. If I remember correctly, the halftime score was 17-14. So it wasn't like a big comeback or anything. It was just, one team went ahead and the other would tie the game up. Just that sort of thing. But I think the reason why the Raiders won this one is because of coaching. Like I said all year, I think the Raiders are a good coach team. But for the Lions, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. They're struggling to finish games. They've been in close ones all season long, and they've just struggled to finish. They got outscored 14-7 in the fourth quarter by the Raiders. I mean, that is exactly how you lose a football game. Ending badly like that. For the Lions, their main issue is defense and how bad it's been, but that was an atrocious play call by Darren Bevel at the end of the game that, if they get that, they, will probably force overtime if they, go for 1 or, maybe they go for 2. Who knows? Hindsight's 20/20. Anyway, Oakland's a well-coached team, and a win like this for them will only bolster their confidence because they played a really good Lions offense. An offense that knows how to score points, and your offense came out on top. That's going to bolster confidence for this Raiders team. They're frisky, and you know what? That's fun. I didn't think I'd be enjoying Oakland this much this year. But that AFC West is starting to get real interesting. Now, because the Raiders are, only one game back from Kansas City? And they're playing the Chargers Thursday night. Things are about to get real interesting in the AFC West. A division that we thought was a runaway thing for the Chiefs to start the year. Maybe isn't so runaway after all. I like the Lions. I like their offense. Their defense is awful. They just can't finish. That's their issue right now. But I do think they're a much better team than they were last year. Last year they were just boring and unwatchable. Now they're watchable, but they can't finish. So, still room to improve. But the Raiders are a much better team than they were last year. Already a massive improvement. If I remember correctly, they've matched their win total from last year at this point. They won 4 games all of last year. Now they've already won 4. They're going to win some more. I really wouldn't be surprised if this team is at least 8-8. They're a well-coached team, and they've got some talent, and I think they're only going to get better. But we're going to talk about the Raiders a bit more when we get to Thursday Night Football, the preview portion here in a couple minutes. Moving on to our next one, Cleveland at Denver. Denver wins this one 24-19. Denver improves to 3-6. Cleveland falls to 2-6. Oh man, poor Cleveland. Brandon Allen does just enough for the Broncos as they put the death nail in a Cleveland season. It wasn't just Brandon Allen. Philip Lindsay also had a solid game, and Denver's defense also really stepped up in this one. I'm going to read you some stats. You ready? Brandon Allen went 12 of 20 for 193 yards, but he had 2 touchdown passes, and that was big for them. Got sacked 3 times. Philip Lindsay, 9 rushes, 92 yards, and a touchdown. But here's the really crazy one. Noah Fant, the Broncos tight end who couldn't catch anything these last couple weeks. 3 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Most of that coming on a 75-yard catch-and-run touchdown by the guy who made Cleveland's defense look stupid. Denver's defense held strong late. They forced 2 fourth down stops in the second half to help win. One of them was a Baker Mayfield run that got stuffed short. Another was a very bad pass by Baker Mayfield to, I think it was Landry in double coverage that they knocked away. Cleveland only scored 1 touchdown in this game. Only 1. That was to Jarvis Landry in the second half, but everything else was field goals. But I want to make this note really quick. When they pulled within close late for the Browns, it really felt like the fans were starting to turn on the Broncos because it was in Denver and we've seen them choke away close games late this entire season. It just felt like an oh no, here we go again kind of situation. And I really think the Browns had them because on that second fourth down stop late in the game, Baker Mayfield drops back and Odell Beckham Jr. is in one-on-one coverage with Chris Harris. And Odell Beckham's got him beat. He's got him beat bad. If Baker Mayfield just looks his way and floats it, that's a walk-in touchdown. I 1,000,000,000% believe it's a touchdown. But Baker Mayfield never looks his way and forces a pass to Jarvis Landry directly in front of him in a double coverage that falls incomplete. And Odell Beckham Jr. walks to the sideline, and he apparently has some words to say. Some not nice words, and things are just falling apart in Cleveland. They're just an unwatchable mess. I really think that Odell Beckham had a touchdown, but Baker never looked his way. Ever. The numbers really weren't there for the Denver offense, but it looked like they played better. It felt like they really took advantage of Brandon Allen's mobility, something that Joe Flacco doesn't have. They were getting him out on bootlegs and all this kind of stuff. So maybe they'll be slightly better going forward. Who knows? But it was just a quick note that I noticed from the Broncos offense. They look slightly better out there with Brandon Allen. I'm not saying Brandon Allen's a better quarterback than Joe Flacco because I don't think he is. I'm just saying he's a different type of quarterback, and I feel like that can make the Broncos better as a result. But credit to the Broncos. They drew up a good game plan to help Brandon Allen out in his first start. And first win for Brandon Allen. That's got to feel really great for him. First start in like 4 years since his last one in college. I mean, it's been a while for the young man, but he got it. For Cleveland, though, Baker Mayfield went 27 of 42 for 273 yards and a touchdown, 2 sacks. It's just over in Cleveland. I'm sorry. I said it on Friday. If you can't beat this Broncos team right now, your season's over. And they didn't beat this Broncos team, so their season's over. I will no longer talk about the Browns with any kind of hope or anything like that. They will be talked about the same way I talk about the Jets and the Dolphins, as a team that their only thing they can look forward to now is the draft. That is all they have left. Your season is over. Pack it up. Bye-bye. Once again, Denver wins this one, 24-19. Proves to 3-6. Browns fall to 2-6, and their season is officially dead, people. Let's move on. Talk about upset of the weekend. Green Bay at the Chargers. Chargers win this one 26-11. Chargers improved to 4-5. Green Bay falls to 7-2, snaps a 4-game winning streak for the Packers. Chargers have arguably their best game of the season, undoubtedly, as they institute a one-sided beatdown on the Packers. For the Chargers, as we talked about last week, they had fired their offensive coordinator, so now they had a new look on offense, and it looked great. They had balance and a run game. They had 38 rushes for 158 yards in this game. And Melvin Gordon looked like his old self out there. He was leaping over people. He was trucking them. He looked great out there. Melvin Gordon finished the game on 20 rushes for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just bowing over everybody and anybody on that Packers defense. And it wasn't just the Chargers offense that looked good. Their defense was great. Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa feel like they're at 100% for the first time all season. And they were wrecking anything that was unlucky enough to step in front of them on that side of the field. I mean, my gosh. I think they combined for 3 sacks and 3 tackles for losses in this game, but it felt like a lot more than that just watching it. I really feel like this game was like a cautionary tale of what the Chargers could have been if they were healthy for most of the season. Melvin Gordon doing work. Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram just dominating anything that steps in front of them. And Phillip Rivers had a really good game. He went 21-28 for 294 yards and got sacked twice. Played really good, though. Mike Williams also had a good game. The Chargers wide receiver, 3 catches, 111 yards. They played great. It cannot be understated enough how good this Chargers team played. It was undoubtedly their best game all season long on both sides of the football. The Packers, they were just in a funk this entire game. They were held scoreless till a field goal in the third quarter, finally got them on the board, and they had less than 200 yards of total offense in this game, and one of Rodgers' arguably his worst showings of his career. Aaron Rodgers in this game finished 23-35, 161 yards and a touchdown, 3 sacks. If I remember correctly, they had less than 100 yards going into the fourth quarter. This was not good from the Packers at all. It was stunning. You don't see this kind of stuff happen to an Aaron Rodgers-led team. You just don't. You see these kind of numbers, and the only logical conclusion is that Aaron Rodgers got hurt early in the game. But he didn't. He was out there the entire time, and they just got dominated by a Chargers team. It was ugly for the Chargers. You know, they would get down to the red zone a bunch of times, and the Packers would hold on defense, so they would have to kick field goals. But it was a big win for them. A big win against a good Green Bay Packers team. So the Chargers should take it. You know, this was the first time all season long that the Chargers resembled what they were last season when they won like 11 games and made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. They finally look like that team for the first time. That should scare teams because the Chargers were really great coming down the stretch last year. Maybe they can repeat it. Who knows? Anything's possible. I mean, now they're only 1 game under 500. And once again, they're playing the Raiders Thursday night. Big division game. Big division game. That AFC West is getting real interesting. Now the Chargers are 1 game under 500. The Raiders are 500. And the Chiefs still don't have Patrick Mahomes. So anything is possible. Now, After the game, Aaron Rodgers said that he felt this team got a nice big slice of humble pie. I think maybe that's what it was. The Packers were 7-1 coming into this one, and everybody was tooting their horn over this team. The team is best in the NFC. Nobody could stop this Packers offense. Look how good Rodgers and Jones are. This Matt LaFleur-led team is great. Rodgers said that maybe they believe their own hype a little too much. And you know what? Sometimes this is what it takes. You go on the road against a 3-win team and you get bullied. You get dominated. They run you out of the stadium. Because that's what happened. They got ran out of the stadium. So maybe the Packers can bounce back and look better because, they were not themselves in this game. And sometimes it takes a butt whooping to, come back to your senses and stop believing your own hype. But it cannot be understated enough. The Chargers played phenomenally in this game, and they deserve a ton of credit for the season they've had that they've dealt with to win a big-time game against a 7-1 Packers team. Chargers are back in the thick of it. And, don't look now, but, maybe they make a run. They're starting to get healthy. And Gordon is starting to look like his old self again. Don't look now, but here come the Chargers. Once again, they win this one 26-11, and we're going to talk about them more here in a couple minutes. But moving on to the Sunday Night Football game, the game that everybody was watching. New England and Baltimore. Baltimore wins 37-20. Baltimore improves to 6-2, and Lamar Action Jackson hands the Patriots their first loss of the season. At 8-1, he snaps an 8-game winning streak for the Patriots. Baltimore dominates. That is an uncomfortable word to say towards the Patriots, but they got dominated in this game. As the Patriots had no answer for Lamar Jackson or that entire running game with Mark Ingram. If you were watching this game, you and the rest of the football world were as stunned as I was watching it, as Baltimore jumped out to an early 17-0 lead. And they were making the Patriots defense look not only mortal, they made them look beatable. Very beatable. They jump out to a 17-0 lead in the early first quarter, and that crowd in Baltimore's going crazy, but credit to the Patriots, they strike back in the second quarter with 13 unanswered points to go into halftime, only down 4 at 17-13. And it just had the feel of, Baltimore got them early, but Belichick's going to make some adjustments, come out in the second half, and, show these young whippersnappers what's what. It just had that feel. A classic Patriots game. They get down early. Tom Brady does a magical comeback in the second half, right off into the sunset with the win. That didn't happen. They go into halftime down 17-13, and Baltimore outscores New England 20-7 in the second half. 20-7. Oh, it was beautiful. In this game, it was really weird watching it because everything felt like it was going the Ravens' way. Stuff that normally goes the Patriots' way was working against them. The penalties, getting the Patriots' offense in deep down in distance. The offsides by their defense. That's stuff that the Patriots do to other teams. But the Ravens were doing it to the Patriots. Not only that, the turnovers. The Patriots had 3 turnovers in this game? Yeah. They had 3 turnovers in this game, and they also had a defensive touchdown scored on the Patriots. That's stuff the Patriots defense does to other teams. It was a reversal of fortune that, we've seen what the Patriots have done all year long, and now we were seeing it done to the Patriots. We were watching the boogeyman get bullied. It was great. But I think the really incredible thing about this game, that even though Baltimore had the lead late in the fourth quarter, it wasn't late, it was early to mid fourth quarter, they decided to put their foot on New England's throat and end this. You know why? Because they had a 9-minute and 35-second drive in the fourth quarter that ended with a Lamar Jackson touchdown run. That is how you finish a team. That is what we have seen the Patriots do to other teams for years. A long, lengthy touchdown run to end all hope. And the Ravens did it to the Patriots in primetime football, and I was stunned. It was insane. The Patriots defense had absolutely no answers for Lamar in that run game. The Ravens had 210 total rushing yards, and they put up 30 points of offense on this Patriots defense that was allowing 7 points a game. 30 points. 30. That's insane. The Patriots offense is officially a concern right now. They have no running game to speak of. They had 68 yards of rushing in this game. And Brady feels like he's disconnecting with the wide receivers. I mean, Julian Edelman caught 10 passes for 80 yards, and Mohamed Sanu caught 10 passes for 80 yards. A lot of them were, quick slants and all that, but, there's outside of that, what is their passing offense right now? Everything's fine and dandy when, the Patriots defense is putting up historic numbers and only allowing 7 points, but when, their defense breaks down and, they need the offense to score, what do the Patriots do? I do have faith in Tom Brady and the rest of that offensive coaching staff to figure things out. They've done it a billion times before over 20 years, and they'll do it again. But I'm just saying, as of right now, it was concerning watching it. It really was. But we had talked about it, that maybe the Browns had exposed a weakness in this Pats defense and running the football. And we were absolutely right. That's how you beat this Patriots defense. You get them going sideline to sideline with quickness, and they have no answer. They literally have no answer. Mark Ingram, the Ravens running back, 15 carries, 115 yards. Lamar Jackson, 16 carries, 61 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The Pats had no answer for this run game, and this is how you beat them. You get physical and you run the ball at them. Either up the middle or you can go sideline to sideline. Now, not everybody has a Lamar Jackson, a mobile quarterback that can run, but you know who plays the Patriots over the next couple weeks? A healthy Patrick Mahomes in a couple weeks. Deshaun Watson. Dak Prescott. Mobile quarterbacks that know how to run and also have run games. Granted, the Chiefs isn't that good, but still, you get the point. The Patriots are really going to be tested going through these next couple weeks. And you know what? The Patriots are really sloppy in this game. Like I mentioned, the turnovers, the penalties. And they're going into a bye week, so Bill Belichick is going to be a nightmare for this team. He is going to really ring it on them for, being this bad in this game. He's going to work his propaganda magic saying, no, we're not good enough. Look at what we did in this game, yada, yada, yada. Lamar's great, man. He's really great. And they deserved every moment of this because they were the far and away the better team that night. This was important for the league because, everybody had been hyping the Patriots up as like a mythical boogeyman that was unstoppable and was coming to take your soul. Well, the boogeyman just got beat, and beat badly. So this was important. Now the rest of the league knows what to do against this Patriots defense. They know that they can beat them and that they're mortal. Once again, Baltimore wins this one 37-20. And you know what? The Ravens aren't good. I'm going to say that right now. The Ravens are not a good team. They're a great team. They are one of the better teams in the AFC, especially if that defense continues to improve week to week like they did in this one. The Ravens are a great team, especially if that defense keeps improving. All right, moving on to our last one. Dallas at New York. Cowboys win this one 37-18. Dallas improves to 5-3, and the Giants fall to 2-7 and have lost 5 straight games. Dallas's defense dominates in this one, and a very sloppy, chippy game to sweep the Giants for the 3rd straight season. Dallas defense, let me see. They racked up 5 sacks in this game, had 17 on the year, forced 3 turnovers, and returned one of those turnovers for a touchdown late in the game, and allowed 271 total yards. This was probably the best Dallas defense game. Well, no, the Eagles game was better. Yeah. But this Dallas defense is improving. These last 2 weeks, they've played a lot better, especially with that addition of Michael Bennett, who had one of the Cowboys' 5 sacks in this one. Turnovers and generating sacks is where this team has struggled, and they did both very excellently in this game. But it wasn't always that. The Cowboys really struggled in the early goings. It was a 9-3 game in the second quarter in favor of the Giants, And it felt like an upset was starting to brew. The Cowboys felt like they were in trouble. Prescott had 84 passing yards total, but then it happened. Play was stopped because a black cat had ran onto the field and into the end zone. Now, he was only on the field for like a minute, but it was long enough. Now, like I said, an upset felt like it was brewing, and the Cowboys were down 9-3. But after the cat left the field, it was a different story. Because then after that, Dallas outscores the Giants 34-9, and Prescott throws for 173 more yards and 3 touchdowns. The game felt like it had shifted. And it really shifted not just after the cat, but right before halftime when Dak Prescott hit Blake Jarwin for a 42-yard touchdown catch and run. I had said the Giants' defense was bad, but I didn't think they were that bad where they just missed a completely blown assignment and can't tackle Blake Jarwin running downfield. I mean, my goodness. And but even after all of that, it was still a close game in the fourth quarter. It was 16-15 in favor of the Cowboys at the start of the fourth quarter. And the Giants were still in it, considering that they had only scored one touchdown and kicked a bunch of field goals. But the Cowboys offense started slow and sluggish. They had 2 first-half turnovers, a fumble by Randall Cobb, and an interception by Prescott. But once they got rolling, they were effective. They finished the game on a 21-3 run in the fourth quarter. 2 offensive touchdowns, 1 defensive touchdown. You know what? 2 of their touchdowns they scored were 40-plus yard touchdowns by Prescott. That was great. So when it gets rolling, it's lethal. But it's not always rolling. Sometimes they're slow and sluggish, like they were in this game. Ezekiel Elliott had arguably his best game of the season, had a season high in yardage, 23 rushes, 139 yards. Prescott finished 22-35 for 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Cowboys offense played great down the stretch, but they just need to show some consistency. The Giants just looked awful. Their defense did not do good, especially after the Black Cat incident. But their offense is also not helping things, especially with Daniel Jones continually turning the ball over. He had 3 turnovers in this game. He finished 26 of 41, 210 yards, a touchdown, 1 interception, got sacked 5 times and 2 fumbles. Like I said, he's tied for the league lead in turnovers, and Dallas had 13 points off those 10 turnovers. Off those 3 turnovers, I should say. He's got to learn to, hold on to the ball. But, he's a rookie. It's growing pains. It happens. The Giants had no offense. Saquon Barkley got bottlenecked outside of that one, like a 65-yard catch and run. Outside of that, he had 28 rush yards. Daniel Jones was the leading rusher for the Giants with 54 yards. You draft Saquon Barkley number 2, you expect more production. Now, I don't know if he's still hurt or maybe Pat Shurmur's mishandling him. I'm not sure what's going on with the Giants right now. But these last couple of weeks, Saquon Barkley has not looked very good. And I'm not sure why. But like I said, Daniel Jones needs to learn to hold on to the football better. His ball security has been a massive issue. He's tied for the league lead with Gardner Minshew for fumbles. He's got to do better. And you know what? It's growing pains right now with New York. They're a bad team. They're 2-7. Not much needs to be said. Cowboys are 5-3, but there's still questions about the Cowboys. But for New York, I want to say this to make you guys feel better. Only one other quarterback in history of the league won his first 2 starts and then lost his next 5, like Daniel Jones just did. You know who he was? John Elway. It just goes to show you that a bad start doesn't mean that he's a bad quarterback. So, it's growing pains. I think he'll get better. I really do. So, just be patient and help him grow. That's all you need to do. But to the Cowboys can beat up on the bad teams. They have a 4-1 record this season against teams that are below 500. And are 1-2 against teams that are 500 and better. So the question remains, can they beat good teams? They can beat up the bad ones, but can they beat the good ones? It remains to be seen. But once again, Cowboys win this one 37-18, and they got a big Sunday Night Football game against Minnesota next week. So that's it for our recap portion. We went a bit longer in that than I had thought, but we made it through. And we're going to quickly talk about the Thursday night football game between the Chargers and Raiders in Oakland. I know we talked about these teams earlier, and I said the AFC West is getting interesting, and it is. The Chargers looked great against Green Bay, but now comes the hard part. Be consistent. Can you string together some wins? Green Bay looked flat, and you beat them. Okay, go beat a tough divisional opponent in Oakland, in prime time. Get some respect. Currently, Phillip Rivers leads the league in pass yards with 2,609 yards, and he's playing against a really bad pass defense. The Raiders rank number 32 according to ESPN in pass defense. They're averaging 297.5 passing yards per game. And remember, they let Matthew Stafford throw for over 400 yards on Sunday. So maybe Phillip Rivers has a big game and Keenan Allen starts putting up some similar production that he had earlier in the season. But for the Raiders on offense, just ride Josh Jacobs. I had mentioned before that the Chargers' rush defense isn't good. Keep building on that Rookie of the Year case for Josh Jacobs. I really think this is going to be a fun game on Thursday night. But here's a very sentimental note. This will be the last primetime game that we get with the Raiders in Oakland, because they're moving to Las Vegas next year. A piece of football history. We're going to see it, and it's going to be grand. And what better way? You got a tough division opponent coming to town, and you're jockeying for position in a tight AFC West game. When I was doing this write-up this morning, I thought, you know what? I felt like it felt like the smart thing to say the Chargers win this game. It felt like the smart thing to say. But I ain't thinking with my brain. I'm thinking with my heart. I'm going to go sentimental. I think the Raiders steal one on Thursday Night Football and go to above 500 in their last primetime home game in Oakland. It just feels right. That place has seen many historic moments from one of the historic franchises in league history. What better way to end it than with a primetime home victory over the Chargers, in my opinion. So I'm taking the Raiders on Thursday night. And that's it for our podcast today. I know we went a bit longer than I thought, but hey, you know what? It happens. So next time we talk, it will be Friday, where we will recap this Thursday night football game we just previewed and preview the rest of the Week 10. I think that's what we're in now, Week 10 slate. We're getting close to the end, people. Things are getting tight. Playoff spots are on the line. It's getting fun. So thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll see you Friday. Bye.